Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I've got in November 23rd, I made Kootenay Silver an official pick in the reports based on the drill results they had then. Then we had an interview on the 28th, and now they had some more great results out today. So I got Jim McDonald on the horn. Thanks for joining us today, Jim.
Yeah, good to be here, Allan. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, let's get right into the news here. The headline is that Kootenay Silver completes 2023 program with 2,123 grams per ton of silver over 1.54 meters, within 501 grams per ton of silver over 10.26 meters at the Columba High Grade Silver Project. Great stuff there, Jim.
Yeah, it is great stuff. So really like those holes because they're the easternmost holes that we have that's in the silver zone. And so it leaves it wide open in that direction. And there's a few hundred meters of strike along that direction before it hits another vein called the B vein, where we've also got some really good width and high grade intercepts in it as well. So this is the really great looking results, a great way to finish a program with these two holes that are about 50 meters apart. And the other really interesting thing is that they're surrounded by this stockwork. So when you take that high grade half kilo and you take the medium grade that comes before it, we've got some pretty fat intercepts there, like over 17 meters of over 300 grams on the one hole. And I think it was 28 meters of over 200 and some grams. I don't know the number exact off the top of my head, but so these, these wide high grade half kilo, and then you've got this great grade around it too. So that's going to add a lot of ounces when you put it all together. And now all these holes were step outs from the previous drilling, and we hit 12 out of 12 holes. So this is a real great, consistent vein, and is turning out to look really, really exciting. So now we've got the project set up for the follow-up program next year, which will be sort of a grid pattern of step-out drilling following this exact vein. Also doing the same thing on the B vein that intercepts this one. And then with the historically worked vein called the F vein, we'll be doing some infill in there. So we want to get enough drilling into these three areas to come up with a maiden resource at around this time next year, sort of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter, and yeah, for a maiden resource.
And how quickly do you think that you would be able to get a preliminary economic assessment done on that? I like to see when companies are going to go to that jump towards the development discount window, I like to see juniors be able to quickly do economics. I've seen too often that maiden resources tend to stick around for a long time before they run economics on it. But knowing what I do know about epithermal veins, I would think that you could follow that up pretty quickly.
Well, yeah, you can. So if you've got, if your maiden resource, for example, is of a sufficient size where it can carry capital costs potentially, right? Then you can get right into the PEA. Or if you think you maybe need to add another 25% ounces or something, then that's what you go out and do. So you make that decision then. But once you see your resource has got sort of the bulk of size that's needed, you can get into a PEA and get a PEA out in a pretty reasonable time, like sort of an 8-month time frame.
Perfect. And have you run any metallurgical work on the on your material?
No, not yet. So that's one of the things that we're in the process of doing and will be a part of next year's program. We can see, visually, we know we got silver sulfate salts there. And from the historic mining, there's some scant records there that we're reporting sort of the 70% to mid 80% kind of recoveries. And one of the things we did during due diligence actually on this project, because what excited us was the assays from the old mine, and but that mine's flooded, so we couldn't get in and
Ah,
directly confirm it. But from the grades reported in the sampling in the underground and what they reported on recoveries, we could sample the tailings that are there. There's a little bit of tailings, and then back calculate that and match it, and it matched up. So, so we've got some backup there. First of all, for that the grade was real, and now we've drilled a whole bunch of holes, and we know it's real. And then on the recovery, so what the recovery they're reporting looks to be accurate as well.
now you mentioned earlier, and I always like to, I've learned a long time ago the importance of predictability and continuity. That's really, everybody says grade makes mines, but grade is king, but continuity is what really makes mines. You can't have sporadic distribution of your metals to have a profitable mine. And predictability is often, the continuity is the result of predictability and figuring it out. And so that's looks like what you guys are doing.
Yeah, that is what we're doing, and that's on this round of drilling. That's what was so um, satisfying. Yeah, satisfying is that we hit 12 out of 12 where predicted, and they all grade. And we're getting quite a number of those holes with real good widths and real good grade as well. So that's great. Like as you say, I mean, if you have something that's erratic, and then that's a lot harder to deal with. And but this has been very consistent. And like the historic F vein, we've drilled 700 meters of strike there, and it's very consistent vein as well. It's not as wide, but it is very consistent. And then there's at least two other veins beside it that are quite consistent too. Maybe not quite the strike length. We don't understand those veins totally yet, but overall we're seeing real good consistency along these veins. And at surface we can follow these structures like the J vein structure for up to 4 kilometers.
Wow.
So it's got good size, and that the footprint of the vein system that we're identifying here is about 4 kilometers by 3 kilometers. So that's of the size of some well-known, more advanced districts in Mexico that are well over 100 million ounces in size. So, we that's why we're so bullish on this project, that it can reach that kind of threshold. And when you get to that size, then it's a lot easier to make your economics if your grade is there, because that you have to amortize your building cost over your ounces, of course.
And the way they evolve, well, first of all, in these epithermal veins in Mexico, 2 to 4 meters, 400 grams. So you're getting, up there with a half a kilo over multiple meters. So it's looking quite exciting. And another thing that happens is that oftentimes you start out with a maiden resource, keep drilling it, and they have a tendency to grow. And that's how these epithermal veins, they may start out with a 5 to 7 year mine life, but they often can keep adding ounces as they're being mined.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's exactly right, and that's what you see happen when you got a good vein district. That's exactly what happens. And one of our resource projects, Las Higueras in the Parral famous Perel district. And to the south of that, of our La Ciguera project, is the Santa Barbara district, a part of that area. And they've been mining for 450 years there, and they're mining at a depth of 2,000 meters now. So, I mean, that's an incredible, I'm not saying that's what we have here at Columba, but kind of the point is when you get into a good, strong vein system, yeah, you do keep finding more and more.
And
We're
oftentimes those veins, there's a lot of blind veins that don't come to surface, and you can accidentally find them when drilling at an angle to assess another vein. I've seen where you go through the vein and the mineralization picks up again, or sorry, the alteration picks up again. And if you keep on drilling, a lot of times you'll find blind veins that don't even come to surface, such as at Mag Silver's Juanicipio. Both Juanicipio and Valdecanis are blind veins.
yeah, that's right. I mean, that was a great discovery story. You had the structure at surface with alteration, but really nothing in it. And they drilled down to that level, projected where the top of the silver zone begins there, where they thought it would begin, and they were right, and it was there. And so, our approach here is very similar. We're at the very tip top of this system, so most of what we see is above the silver zone. And so we're projecting these structures down to where the top of that zone is generally going to start. And that's what we're finding. And that's what's pretty exciting about these last two holes, because at surface, your vein is pretty weak. There's no real silver in it anymore, but because you're so high up.
Right.
But you drill down to that level, and there it is. You got good half-kilo material over multiple meters.
What Jim, for the non-geologist out there, what Jim is talking about in these epithermal vein systems, they have zonation of grade. And how you can think about it is sort of thinking about it like a boiling pot of water. And, when you're above when you're at the top of the boiling water, there's lots of bubbles. And then when you get down into the actual boiling water, that's where you hit your grade in these systems. So part of the trick is that sometimes, excuse me, sometimes these epithermal veins can be overlooked when you're sampling from above the boiling zone. And the trick is to get into the boiling zone. And that's what Jim is explaining here, is that they have a good handle on where the boiling zone is in their network of epithermal veins.
Yeah, yeah, well described. And we do. And that's the unique nature of this is that it's almost entirely preserved and eroded just enough to see the top of the silver zone. So lots of projects you go into, vein projects, you might see lots of vein exposed, but you don't know where you are in that column. Are you at the top, you at the middle, or are you at the bottom? We know that we're at the top. So
Right.
whatever was deposited here originally is still
Still
there.
there. And you know where to target the boiling zone. And that's another interesting thing, because where you have one, if you get a good understanding of one vein, it helps you with the other veins in the cluster.
Yeah, absolutely it does. So a general rule of thumb for us is around 1,700 meters above sea level. That's the beginning of your best area.
And
And
where are you above sea level at the project at current surface?
well, we're in a caldera, so you have a lot of relief there, right? So you've got this gold volcanic cone, and on the edges, you're quite high up.
Yeah,
You'll be 1,900 meters.
right,
But at the bottom of the caldera, you're at about 1,700. So you're just
right at it.
starting to expose the beginning of the silver zone. And
That's
that's
pretty
why
exciting.
Yeah,
That's
very
pretty
cool.
exciting because you're basically drilling right into the bonanza zone of an epithermal vein system.
Yeah.
Perfect. The other thing that impressed me a lot is I live in Mexico and I live not far from Fresnillo district and Zacatecas district. And what really impressed me also about you guys is that you have an entire cluster of epithermal veins on your property. And it's very similar to what you see over at Fresnillo. If you look at the cluster that's right in under the city of Fresnillo and Saucito and Juanicipio, that covers about the area of your claims. And there's a bunch of known veins there. So you got a lot of runway to do exploration because you only have a good understanding on a few of those veins.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. And there's lots of areas with no holes in them at all yet. So uh it's pretty exciting because let's see what happens. And as you mentioned, or as you pointed out, you get into these good epithermal vein systems, and quite often you're finding veins that don't even come to surface.
Right?
And we've seen some of that on the historic vein, what we call the F vein. There's at least two other veins there in the hang wall side, and there's a footwall vein that we don't quite understand yet. So these don't show themselves at surface. So you're going to have these things that are blind discoveries as you're drilling, hopefully. I mean, there's no guarantee, but when you're into a system with so many veins, your chances are better.
And that really excites me because I know the history of the Milagros veins, about 20 kilometers from where I live. They were mining two parallel veins and at Milagros, and they were cross-cutting to connect the two veins at depth. As they were cross-cutting, they hit a blind vein,
Hmm.
and that blind vein had spectacular value, rock value. So it really was a game changer for the whole Milagros vein district, our vein system. So I always pay attention to the potential for blind veins being discovered.
Yeah, it can be pretty exciting if you lay into something like that. That's really exciting.
So to put it in a nutshell, you guys have an entire cluster. You've found very high grade to spectacular grades. And the system has good predictability and continuity. You have a bunch more veins to explore and drill. I think that puts you in a pretty special situation for a junior explorer of epithermal veins.
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, this is we're very fortunate to have come across this property. We now own 100% of it, and like as you point out, it's not very often you get an opportunity like this, and so it's going to take lots of drilling to see how big and how good it really is. And we've drilled 147 holes now, so we know quite a bit more than we did, and there's quite a bit more to learn. And we've got a number of veins where we can see great potential for a resource coming together, and that'll be the next step. And then there's lots of exploration beyond that step. So first, let's systematically drill the best of what we see and get ourselves to a maiden resource, and then keep building on that.
Good. Well, you picked a hell of a good day to put this news out, Jim. Yesterday we had the Federal Reserve meeting, and in the statement they stood pat. No more. They're not raising interest rates. And then so gold moved up and silver moved up quite nicely. And then Fed Chairman Powell did his press conference. And I noticed that there was a change in his tone when he was doing the presentation. And then I wasn't the only one because the reporters, they started asking him questions about when they're going to consider cutting interest rates. And as soon as he started answering those questions, first of all, it was a real change. In the past, when he would be asked those questions, he kind of had a scowl on his face and sort of dismissed the people as don't be silly, kind of. And this one, he was accepting the questions, answering them, talking about how they're considering that they don't want to overdo it, that and it was a very dovish question and answer period, and gold and silver continued to pop up and have kept those gains today. Um, what's your feeling on gold and silver? I mean, they go kind of hand in glove. Where gold goes, silver goes, but silver tends to outperform in both directions.
Well, yeah. So the the setup is really good for precious metals that we believe, and there's been lots of commentary from experts on that that are, well, far better versed than I am. And, gold and silver behind it are the ultimate store of value. And so they're monetary assets. And silver's got this huge industrial demand now and got this supply tightening going on because of that demand. And if you start to kick in some extra monetary demand in the silver, then you get this huge slingshot effect that we've seen happen historically in the past. And where gold will go first, and eventually it'll drag silver along, and then that sort of slingshot effect takes over, and silver shoots past gold and exceeds it in performance. And that's when you see, that's when you see the really, really big moves. And so when that happens again, and we believe it's going to happen again, there's no guarantee of that, but historically it's always happened, and silver catches up and then goes past it. So that would set it up for a challenge of its old highs of $50. So that would be a big, big change from where we are, of course. Now, what I'm saying is speculative, and we just go off of, we're saying these things off of experience and what we've seen in the past. And that's what we believe is going to happen here in the future. And so if it does, then it's going to be doubly exciting with having a great discovery like Columba
Well,
and
especially because of
surging
where
silver.
you are, in Mexico, you have very low cost of production. And even at today's price, you could make a lot. There's mining companies out there making a lot of money, such as Silvercrest and Mag Silver
Yeah.
and others. And so that's what makes Mexico special is these high grade, low cost epithermal vein mines. But another thing that's interesting is that there really aren't a lot of junior exploration companies focused primarily on silver. Silver is often a byproduct of other metals being mined. Primary silver deposits are a lot harder to find. I mean, even Silvercrest has a pretty big component of gold in it. Mag Silver is primary silver. So there's not a big menu out there for investors that become interested in silver mining and silver stocks to choose from. And you definitely have a pretty attractive exploration project going on.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, we really do. And then we were backed by our resource projects and a big resource base on top of it that gives the leverage alone to silver price. So it's it's a great spot to be in. A discovery like Columba doesn't come around every day, that's for sure.
No.
And the question that remains is how big is it going to be? So now more drilling.
And when will you get drilling again, Jim?
Well, we want to get going as early in the first quarter as we can.
Okay,
Like to have a maiden resource out kind of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter, if possible.
okay.
And we
So
think
you'll probably
20,000
want to
meters will
try
do it.
to get a good 2 quarters in of drilling. And that's another nice thing about Mexico.
Yeah.
You're not way up in remote areas where it's hard and you got weather fighting you. The drilling seasons tend to be a lot longer in Mexico than in the far off jurisdictions.
Yeah, this area we can drill 12 months of the year.
Wow.
And you can get some in the rain season, some storms that'll hold you up for a little while potentially, but you can drill 12 months a year. Yeah, the access here is excellent. Yeah.
Another beautiful, that's kind of why I moved down here, Jim. I came to do some property visits and every project I looked at had road access with
Yeah.
power lines right beside them. And I thought, after spending 20 some years in looking at projects in remote jurisdictions where you have to fly and then helicopter in and build a little city there for exploration and high costs of drilling. It was pretty refreshing to be able to drive to everything and have power right beside the road.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
is that kind of the environment you're looking at where you guys are at Columba?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Paved highway from the heart of the property in a straight line is about 10 kilometers only.
Wow, wow. Well, as I said, I think you guys have a very exciting project and focused on silver in Mexico, where there's low costs and high value of rock. And that puts you in a pretty unique position because there's not a lot of silver focused explorers out there. So I'm glad to have you as a pick, Jim, and super happy you take the time to do these interviews with us.
No, well, thank you, Alan. It's great to do these interviews, especially with you and all the experience you have in the industry and exploration and in Mexico particularly.
Well, I'm going to have to make my way up to Chihuahua one day and check out Columba.
Yeah, you'll be suitably impressed. It shows itself really well.
Ah, perfect. Perfecto, as we say in Mexico. Well, I'm going to close it off, Jim. Thank you very much, and look forward to future interviews.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Appreciate it.
So there you go, folks. I don't think I really need to wrap it up. I think I already did. The company has a quite a spectacular exploration project, high-grade silver, epithermal vein cluster. They know that they have high-grade mineralization. It's predictable and has good continuity. They've got all the cluster to keep on exploring on. These kind of projects are not easy to find, and I'm glad I have with Kootenay Silver. As always, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important for you to speak with your financial advisor to assess your risk profile and do the homework. I always recommend doing that homework, and the reason is that it'll enable you to do what the successful investors in this space or any space does. They understand the companies they're investing in, why, and they have a reasonable time frame for success to happen. And that's the ultimate reason why I think you should do your homework, is it will help you get out of this habit of watching the day-to-day fluctuations of stock prices and look at things on a more fundamental and geological basis. And go to their website, you'll find plenty information. And there you go. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.